Hi, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Scenes. Do we have an echo? Can everybody put yourself on mute until you get called on, because there's a little bit of an echo. Okay, once again, welcome to Behind the Scenes. It is Monday. I'm going to look because it's April 12th, and whoever knows what day it is anymore. No clue what month or day, which, when they do cognitive tests, that's one of the tests. And like, what happens now? Like, I think I'm cognitively still pretty solid, but who knows? Anyway, today we are talking about a conversation that started in our Facebook group, which is Working Hard to Raise Teens, Your Teen Media, Working Hard to Raise Teens. And the conversations there are so robust. And if you want to be part of parents helping each other, you should definitely sign up. But one of the conversations was such an interesting question followed by a really wonderful conversation. When the mom wants the daughter to shave and the daughter feels like that's kind of like an archaic concept and that she gets to decide. And so that led us to say, well, what other things are there in our lives where we assume that something's going to happen when our kids hit adolescence and they end up with an opinion and it might not be the same as ours. So we are going to start with Sharon.
I have to admit that I have always been saying, oh, we should in terms of the hair, it's not, you don't have to shave. It's an option. But then as I've gotten closer to having adolescent daughters, I realized that I do have opinions about it. And I kind of want it to happen, even though I shouldn't, I guess. I kind of related to that mom is what I'm trying to say. But my other thing is something that started before adolescence, and that is sports. I really just assumed my kids were going to want to play sports. Now, I always played sports, not well, but it was something I did regularly. I loved being on a team. I just loved being active and, just being part of the group. And my husband played sports too. Nobody was a terrific athlete, but none of my kids really want to play. And I feel like it matters to me more than it should. Like, I really miss that. I wish they wanted to be on a team. I don't even care if, they're the best, although that would be a lot of fun. But it would just be fun for them to participate in the sports. And I know they have to find their own activities they enjoy. And, they have to be active because that's just part of being a healthy human. But yeah, it's a little sad that none of my children want to do sports. And that's something that some other parents would be thrilled, I think, that don't have to go to practices and games and things. But yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Jen, who's below me.
Good morning. So this is interesting. I don't remember having any conversation with my mom about anything to do with puberty at all. It was like not a topic. It just happened. We don't have to talk about it. It just happens. I remember I actually used my allowance money to go down to the corner grocery store that I could walk to so that I could buy deodorant because I felt strongly about that. Like, I wanted it. And also same thing with wearing a bra. It was not offered to me. I was the last of two girls in the locker room who did not wear a bra. And it was such a thing. Like, everybody would look around and you would notice, I'm like, we were down to 3 of us. And then one day it was down to 2 of us. And that girl and I locked eyes. And the very next day we both had a bra on because we were like, I'm not going to be it. Same thing happened with shaving my legs. I took myself down to the corner store and I bought the Daisy, shaver and my shaving cream. And I did it for myself because it was important to me. And I knew my mom wasn't going to bring it up. So you were going to say, great, I'm so glad you did a much better job with your own kids. Wrong. Did not have any conversation with them about shaving. I think deodorant I did. I was like, I just bought it and I threw it on their bed. I'm like, it's probably time to start using this, but I didn't push it. And they both wanted it because for them, it was all about the smell. Like, oh, does it smell good? Then they were interested. But like one day I went into the girls' bathroom and there it was. Somebody had started shaving and I was like, oh, didn't even occur to me that I should have said anything to them about it. But I would just say to them casually if I was going to Target, like, does anybody need anything? Do you want any supplies? Do you need tampons? Do you need deodorant? Do you need shaving cream? So I guess in that way, I made it normal, and like, I didn't want it to feel expected, but I just wanted them to feel like, yes, this is something that happens and it's normal and you should get it if you want it. But I went to a college where shaving was completely optional, and there were plenty of women who didn't. And I was a little turned off by it at first, but I kind of came around to it. I was like, you know what? Why? This should be your choice. It's totally fine. Long-winded way of saying I still struggle every day with the parenting thing. I hope to get it right someday. I am going to kick it over to Emily.
Okay, Emily, before you get on, I'm just going to say that Brianna says in response to Sharon, we encourage sports no matter what kind. We give them options, and they all do karate. So Brianna, I'm just curious if you feel like sharing, is there some other space where you have expectations and your kids feel differently than you do? So it might not be sports in your house, but it might be something else. But if anybody has something, we'd love to hear from you in the comments.
Oh, wait, that reminded me too. In terms of the question of, is there something you have an expectation and that they don't really want to do it? I do have one to contribute there, which is at the end of high school, my daughter had been in marching band all 4 years, and I just assumed she'd want to do it when she went to college. And I was like helping her with the packing list. I'm like, well, I put the flute on her bed. She's like, that is staying in the closet. I'm never taking that out again. And I was like, but you love marching band. And she goes, no, Mom, you love marching band. I was like, oh. So that was my story about that.
Good morning. I have a funny add-on to Sharon's. I think about, realizing as your daughters get older and closer to shaving time that you actually might be more wedded to the idea than you realized. Because in my house, the 2 boys and 1 girl, a lot of times the boys have opinions about whether girls could shave. And so that, of course, gets me completely, I already would say, like, I shave, and I remember like I think in 6th grade, like my next door neighbor and I like just went in the bathroom, and, I think we might have talked to our moms about it. I don't know. But like, we just shaved together for the first time, like, tried it out. And my daughter asked me to shave around like age 12, I think. But yeah, when the boys start piping up, I'm like, okay, no, like, that just makes me want to encourage her the other way. Like, don't do it. Just, because, and they're teasing her, but still, it's just interesting how like different family dynamics can even have an impact on how you come down, because I'm just reacting more against the idea of anybody telling her what she should do with any part of her body than whether I really care about shaving or not. So, but I think in our house, it's kind of the social, like the neighborhood we live in is extremely social. So there's a lot of emphasis on like the school dances and the getting together for games and having a party after the games and before any dances, parties before at people's houses, and parents getting together as part of it and all that. And so I think that's the one that I've had to be to just let them kind of have their own path, and that there's not one right way to, you can have a small group of friends. And it's funny because I personally do much better with a small group of people than a big party. But there's also this idea of like, I guess there's this idea of high school and just going and having fun. And I don't know, I wish we were all a little easier in those social settings. That I wish that my kids had that ease in those social settings, I guess is what I'm saying. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'll pass it to Jody.
Okay, well, hi everyone. This conversation is not going the way that I had envisioned it, but it's fascinating to me. So, but I, thinking a lot about this idea of, things that we want our kids to do and then they don't want to do it, and how, that whole, I don't want to say tug of war, But and Jen, I also have somebody who quit band right before senior year when there was a trip even. But but to me, a lot of it goes back to what I want versus it is kind of a versus what they want. And it's a story. I know my kid wasn't a teen, but my oldest son, he loved sports, and we were so excited when he turned 5 that he would be able to play t-ball, and we signed him up to be on a t-ball team. And we, were like, oh, isn't this great? You're going to get to play. And he's like, I don't want to play. I don't want to play. And we were absolutely dumbfounded. Like, what do you mean you don't want to play? Like, I have to go outside for hours a day and pitch balls to you or field or whatever. And, it took a while. We sat down like, so really, like, what is it that you don't want to do? He's like, well, if I am on a team, I'm going to have to drink Gatorade, and I don't want to have to do that. And it was such a revelation for us, because we realized that whatever was going through his brain, and I think it kind of set the pace for us a lot of times, that was what was a block for him. He loved the sport and he wanted to play, but he was so worried that he would have to drink Gatorade. So we said, you can take water, or you don't have to have snack. Again, whatever, and you can still play. And then it was, balls to the wall, and he was off. And, for the next several years, where we sometimes, wish that he wasn't playing so many sports. But it got me to this realization that, like, so much of it is a conversation about why. And, and you guys have been talking about shaving or this or that, why we want our kids to do something versus why they may or may not want to do something. And I think, like, in the heat of the moment, sometimes if you can pull away from that and find a calm time to be able to have that conversation, then a lot of times there is, some compromise. But, and I'm also, then I have another daughter again. My kids seem to, like, senior year seemed to be their breakout year, who had been playing soccer all along, and in a very, lovely way. And her coach one year told her that her best contribution to the team was her personality. So, which we laughed and laughed, and she loved it too. But by senior year, she had found her other things. I think she had done it because she had followed along in the footsteps of her brothers and her friends and done it. And by senior year, she looked at us and she said, I don't think I want to do this year. I've played, and, but I have other things, and I don't think I'm going to have time. And, again, we were kind of surprised, because you get used to something like, okay, but then, my husband and I were talking later, and we were saying, can you think of one good reason for her to do this? And we couldn't. And we realized that, once again, our kids were right. So I think there is, something to be said for, having these conversations, and, if they've thought it out. And sometimes, you can find out that it's the Gatorade and that's the real reason. And, so whatever, but it's hard. And even when you get back to the original post on Facebook, with the shaving, like it really does get to the heart of why we want things, why our kids want things. And, I think I don't know. I don't have any closing remark to say that. I think it's really fascinating, so, but I don't know that there's any real answer to any of it. So, all right. Okay. Mindy, what do you got?
Well, I will follow up on the sports theme today, and mine is more of an emotional, I think, expectation. And this is what hits me, I think, hardest when I think back on this topic. My oldest was a swimmer, and if he swam poorly or had a bad time, he was almost inconsolable in an angry way for at least 24 hours. And for me, I also played sports in high school. My other boys played sports. To me, it's like, okay, you had a bad race, you had a bad meet. Okay, pick it up, work hard tomorrow, and move on. And it was so hard for me to get my head around. He couldn't talk. He was angry. He couldn't talk about it. I would then get angry. I'd try and talk about it. It was such a clash. And it was just me, I think, coming to the realization he handles things differently. His desires, his way of coping, his motivation, totally different from what I had experienced. And really my husband also. So that's, I think for me, it truly was an adjustment. I can say he really never changed. He swam all the way through college. And by college, we had learned, okay, yeah, bad race. Talk to you tomorrow, 48-hour rule. So it's definitely something you have to come to grips with. And again, it's sort of where that one article about the angry daughter and truly, I related to that as far as I needed to change. I wasn't going to change my child. He was not going to, change how he dealt with it. So it's tough. And I think it's just kind of letting them go. He was safe. It wasn't anything dangerous, but difficult, really difficult for me. So I guess that's, that hits me as an expectation that I had and he clearly didn't meet. So Eka, I'll throw it on down to you over in the corner there. I think you might be able to relate a little bit to that also, but.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sorry I'm late, but one of the things, I don't know what's been said, but I'm going to say that my expectations of my children started when I was pregnant with them. I had their entire lives mapped out for them. And lo and behold, they weren't really sticking to that game plan. So really early on, I had to adjust my expectations of myself and not really of them, because I don't think they got the playbook that I had set up for them. And being the control freak that I am, some of it was really painful for me. And I have this, many of you know him, Mindy does, my husband, who is really a lot of times the voice of logic, who says things like, "They're not you." And sometimes that's all I need to hear to go, "Oh yeah, you're right, they're not." So one of my things has basically been to tell myself they're not me, and they're going to do things not in the way that I want them to. And I have to accept that. And I remember that with my oldest one, many of you guys have heard me talk, she was, we were always butting heads, but then there were a lot of things, and it's almost like she wanted to fight with me. So one of the things I did was I actually almost came up with expectations that I really didn't care about. Oh God, I hope she's not listening.
Wait, Eka, we should share. Jessica, maybe you could find her article, because Eka's daughter wrote an article about being a challenging teenager. And it's a little bit of a love story to Eka too. It's really nice.
Thank you. So what sometimes I did was, I spent a lot of time talking to pediatricians and going to lectures and parenting classes. And one of the things they said is, kids need to differentiate, and they needed sometimes to not fight, but like push back to differentiate. And sometimes I found that I came up with expectations that I let her know, but I really didn't care about, so that she would have something to go up against when, because she needed to almost feel defiant. And so I would come up with rules that I really didn't care about, but she thought I did. And maybe that's manipulative, but I just felt like that was better for us sometimes than to actually have, like, by the end, I sometimes I don't care. I had all these expectations. And by the time that she was a teenager, I was like, God, why are the expectations? I really don't care about that. And I had to let that go. So it helped a lot, but I don't know. I mean, did you guys all have a playbook already in your heads when your kids were little? And dang it, they don't listen. But no, now I'm going to fast forward to as an adult. So now my daughter, who's in her 20s, does come to me. And now I actually feel like I have to be really good with my advice, because now she really wants to know, like, the expectations and what she should be doing. And I find that really difficult also. So in conclusion, parenting is hard. I don't know who's left, you guys, since I was late.
Can I just I just want to follow up on something that you said, Eka, or your husband said, because it's so true and it helped me also, and I think it's key. We're different from our kids. We are not our kids. And that, whether it's the playbook, that I think my husband said the same thing. He's not you. Like, he's not going to react the same and do the same. So I take that away from this conversation, even today as our kids get older.
Yeah, absolutely.
From now on, we will be quoting Rick Taylor.
Well,
Okay, Jessica's last. Well,
Okay, Jess, girl.
I was just going to say one thing before Jessica goes, and our kids are different from each other. So then when you think you got it solved out, that, well, this one's going to do this, like it's just a mystery. So.
All right. Well, I have the perspective of the previous teenager. And just the more everyone talks about the shaving thing, the more I, remember my own teenage years and my 20s, my early 20s, my occasional nows. I'm the laziest person I know, and it's so much surface area to get. So the shaving thing super was a point of contention in my household, and is still often a point of contention when I forget, which I do sometimes. And I think that it's one of those, like, specifically about the shaving thing, like, so many parents worry it's gonna, like, actually be a problem, like, oh, my child's gonna be ostracized or, like, judged or, like, this or this. And just from that perspective of a former teen who forgets to shave often, and a current adult who forgets to shave often, like, it doesn't really make as much of a difference. Like, I think, and I remember, and, like, I've read every single article on this website, and I just keep thinking about the one about, like, the kid who won't do deodorant, and it's always a fight, and, like, the kids are gonna care way more about what their peers think than what the parents think. And, like, if it becomes a problem, if they do start getting ostracized or whatever, like, they're probably gonna come to that conclusion on their own and be like, oh, I'm going swimming today, I should shave. And like, past that, it's not really gonna, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be worth it.
Okay, so I just want to, I can't remember if Jessica's 25. Are you 25?
26, as of like 2 months ago.
Right. So Jessica's ready to be the mother of a teenager. Okay. So Christina says, is age 12 the age girls typically start shaving? How do your teen boys, how do teen boys to wash their faces properly? How do you get your teen boys to wash their faces properly? So I think we probably have some articles about that. If someone wants to, maybe Jessica, you could look about hygiene for kids. I want to say that I think I'm going to use insult, but it's not the right word. I can't think of the right word. But the biggest insult that I unearthed as a parent was finding out that the only way to change the story was for me to change. And I think Mindy said that when she was talking, and I was thinking, I always hate that. Why is it always me that has to change? But as we all know, having parented for many collective years together, it is unfortunately very true that at the end of the day, the job is ours to change either in our reaction or our expectations or whatever else it is. In my house, with 5 kids, 4 kids did musical theater. And so I just assumed that that's what my kids did. That's what my family did. And it was the same part of our lives that sports was for Mindy and Eka and whoever else's kids are very involved in something. So it was our lives. We knew all the kids, we knew all the parents, and it was one big happy family. And then I sent my 5th kid to the summer camp, the musical theater summer camp. And every day he cried and said he didn't want to go. And I was like, no, this is what the Borison kids do. We do this. You like it. They tell me at camp you're having fun. And for a good 2 years, I tortured this child because the reports from the camp were, once he was there, he was having so much fun. But you know what he wanted to do? He wanted to do sports. So we finally gave that kid what he wanted all along. And he spent, many years being very involved in sports all the way through high school. So Emily, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, no. Well, our son was really, really into ice hockey, and he went through a time, he decided not to keep playing when he started high school because a lot of the kids who played during high school, a lot of the schools around here and where we lived before this don't have their own teams. So it's kind of like you're kind of choosing to take yourself out of the Friday night football games and that kind of activity. And at the time, he really wanted to make sure that he had the options to do that. And we just had, it was just a big discussion. And it was one of the first big things that we were letting him, we were debating, like, how much could he decide whether he should quit, or was he going to regret it later if, he stopped at that point. And a lot of our friends were from that group. And I just remember saying to both my son and my spouse, like, it is not your job to have an activity to make us have a social circle and like activities that we're comfortable with. Like, we're adults, we have a car. If we want to get together with these friends, and actually we are still really good friends with a lot of the families, like we can make our own plans.
Emily, you are so much more mature than I ever was.
But I mean, I just do think it's nice to give the kid permission. Like, it's not your job to give us a social life. It's not your job to provide a structure to our week. And we are fully capable if we want to continue. Like, I mean, I would love it if my kids did marching band. I did that. None of them are going to do it. But like, I always sit, if I'm in a football game, I always sit in the stands to watch the band show, you know, or like, I love the musical theater and the choir stuff. I think my daughter's stopping choir, which, you know, it's her choice. But like, I will still go to the concerts.
Wow.
Like because I love it, you know. So I think there is something to that aspect of just like, you know, giving them permission. But
I'm gonna end with Emily is the right approach and the one we should aspire to. Mine, just to make anyone out there feel less bad about themselves, my son is happy to tell you about how I tried to bribe him with an Xbox so he would audition for a play. So here you have like the aspirational Emily, and then, you know, not so perfect Sue. And that was my fifth kid. Like, you really should get smarter by your fifth. But anyway, everyone have a great week. We will see you back here next Monday. And if you want to come on afterwards and add to the conversation, we'd love to hear from you.